The excitement in the air was palpable as our class boarded the yellow school bus bound for the local TV station. As a junior in high school with dreams of becoming a journalist, this field trip was everything to me. I'd spent countless hours watching the evening news, hanging on every word of Cassandra Hayes, the lead anchor. Her poise, her command of the facts, and her ability to connect with viewers through the screen had inspired my career aspirations. Little did I know that this day would change everything. Our teacher, Mr. Thompson, herded us through the main entrance of WKTV, our visitor badges hanging around our necks like medals of honor. The lobby buzzed with activity, phones ringing, people rushing about with stacks of papers, and the constant hum of nearby studio equipment. My classmates chattered excitedly, but I was laser-focused, taking in every detail. As we moved through the building, I lagged behind the group, mesmerized by the inner workings of a real news station. We passed by editing bays where producers hunched over screens, piecing together the day's stories. The walls were adorned with awards and framed photographs of major events the station had covered over the years. I felt like I was walking through hallowed halls. It happened in an instant. I stopped to tie my shoe, and when I looked up, my class had turned a corner and disappeared from view. Panic set in for a moment, but curiosity quickly took over. This was my chance to see the real behind-the-scenes action, unfiltered by the sanitized tour route. I wandered down a corridor, following the sound of activity. The hallway opened up into a large studio space, and my heart leapt when I realized where I was. This was Studio A, where they filmed the evening news. Banks of lights hung from the ceiling, and massive cameras stood sentinel around a familiar news desk. And there, in the center of it all, was Cassandra Hayes herself. Instinctively, I ducked behind a stack of equipment cases. I knew I shouldn't be here, but I couldn't tear myself away. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see my idol in action. I peered around the edge of my hiding spot, holding my breath. Cassandra was in the middle of a heated discussion with a producer. Gone was the warm, reassuring tone I was used to hearing through my TV speakers. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the air like a knife. I felt my stomach drop. This couldn't be the same person I'd admired for years. The producer nodded meekly and scurried away, leaving Cassandra alone at the news desk. She pulled out her phone and began scrolling, a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. My mind was reeling. Was this how news was really made? Manufacturing drama and exploiting people's personal lives for ratings? It went against everything I believed journalism should be. The studio door swung open, and a young intern entered, carrying a tray with Cassandra's lunch. I recognized him as a recent graduate from our high school, someone who had landed this internship with stars in his eyes, just like me. "It's about time," Cassandra said, not even looking up from her phone. "I hope you didn't screw up my order again." The intern stammered an apology, nearly dropping the tray as he set it down. Cassandra finally glanced up, her eyes narrowing. "What's that on your shirt? Is that a stain? Jesus, do I have to do everything around here? Go change before the broadcast. I can't have you looking like a slob on my set." I watched as the intern's face fell, his shoulders slumping as he retreated from the studio. My heart ached for him, remembering how excited he'd been to land this position. Was this what awaited me if I pursued my dreams? As the minutes ticked by, I witnessed more of Cassandra's true nature emerge. She mocked an interviewee's appearance, laughing about how they'd need extra makeup to make them camera-ready. She complained about having to cover a local charity event, dismissing it as fluff that wouldn't boost ratings. With each revelation, I felt my admiration crumbling, replaced by a growing sense of disillusionment. The studio began to fill with crew members, preparing for the evening broadcast. I knew I needed to find a way out before I was discovered, but I couldn't seem to make myself move. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion, horrifying, but impossible to look away from. As the floor director called for quiet on the set, I watched Cassandra undergo a transformation. In the span of a few seconds, the cold, calculating woman I'd been observing disappeared. Her shoulders relaxed, a warm smile spread across her face, and her eyes took on that familiar twinkle I'd seen countless times on my TV screen. The red light on the camera blinked on, and suddenly there was the Cassandra Hayes I thought I knew. Her voice was honey smooth, filled with just the right amount of gravity and compassion. If I hadn't witnessed the preceding hours, I would have believed every word. As she launched into the first story, the very family tragedy she had earlier demanded to exploit, I felt a chill run down my spine. How many times had I been fooled by this act? Taking advantage of the crew's focus on the broadcast, I finally managed to slip out of the studio undetected. My mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions as I made my way back through the station, searching for my class. Relief washed over me when I spotted Mr. Johnson's worried face rounding a corner. I nodded, unable to find my voice. How could I explain what I'd just experienced? As we rejoined the group, my classmates peppered me with questions about where I'd been. I mumbled something about getting lost, but my thoughts were elsewhere. The rest of the field trip passed in a blur. We toured the weather center, visited the control room, and even got to see the giant green screen up close. But the magic was gone. Every smile from a staff member, every enthusiastic explanation of their roles, it all felt hollow now. I couldn't help but wonder what facades they were hiding behind. On the bus ride back to school, while my classmates excitedly recounted their favorite parts of the trip, I stared out the window, lost in thought. The glittering skyscrapers of downtown gave way to familiar neighborhoods, but I felt like I was seeing everything through new eyes. That night, as I sat down with my family to watch the evening news, I felt a knot form in my stomach as Cassandra's face appeared on the screen. My parents commented on how poised and professional she looked, and I bit my tongue. How could I explain that the woman they admired was a carefully constructed illusion? As the days passed, I found myself unable to shake the experience. I started paying more attention to the news, not just on our local station but across all media. I began to notice the subtle ways stories were sensationalized, how certain details were emphasized while others were glossed over. The world of journalism that had once seemed so noble now appeared tarnished. But rather than extinguishing my passion for journalism, this behind-the-scenes glimpse had ignited something new within me. I realized that the problem wasn't with journalism itself, but with those who had lost sight of its true purpose. The world needed honest, ethical reporting more than ever. I threw myself into my school's newspaper with renewed vigor. I started fact-checking every story meticulously, pushing back against sensationalized headlines, and encouraging my fellow student journalists to dig deeper into their subjects. When we covered school events or local news, I made sure we treated every interviewee with respect, both on and off the record. As graduation approached, I found myself at a crossroads. The path to becoming a broadcast journalist like Cassandra suddenly held little appeal. Instead, I began researching smaller, independent news organizations that prided themselves on integrity and in-depth reporting. I wanted to be part of a team that valued truth over ratings. Looking back now, years later, I realized that stumbling into that studio was a pivotal moment in my life. It would have been easy to become cynical, to give up on journalism altogether. But instead, it sparked a determination in me to be part of the solution, to be the kind of journalist I had always believed Cassandra to be. Today, as I prepare to go on air for my own broadcast, a weekly deep dive into local issues that affect our community, I think about that day often. My small team and I may not have the glossy production values of WKTV, but we have something far more valuable: the trust of our viewers. Before every broadcast, I take a moment to remind myself of the responsibility we bear as journalists. To inform, to educate, and to always strive for the truth. I think about that starry-eyed high school student I once was, and I make a silent promise to never become the thing that almost destroyed her dreams. Sometimes, the most valuable lessons come from seeing what we're not supposed to see. That accidental glimpse behind the curtain showed me the ugly side of news media, but it also revealed the immense power and responsibility that comes with being a journalist. It taught me that integrity isn't just something you present to the camera, it's a choice you make every day, in every interaction, whether the red light is on or not. As I straighten my jacket and prepare to go live, I silently thank Cassandra Hayes. Not for being the role model I once thought she was, but for inadvertently showing me the kind of journalist I never want to become. In doing so, she helped shape the journalist and the person I am today. The floor director signals that we're about to go live. I take a deep breath, Look directly into the camera and smile. But unlike Cassandra's practiced mask, my smile is genuine. Because I know that the person I am on camera is the same person I am when the lights go down. And in the world of journalism, that makes all the difference.